This video was brought to you by our Patreon backers. Sign up now to support the channel and get early access to videos, live events, the chance to vote on video topics, and much more. The link is down below. As we probably all know from attending school history classes, the US remains the first and only country to use a nuclear weapon in a military conflict. Tens of millions of people from all over the world had already died in World War II. A war the US believed was dragging on following the surrender of Nazi Germany. And as such, the US decided that it was right to drop its new device on a Japan that refused to surrender. In doing so, not only did the decision to drop 2 bombs kill over 129,000 people, the vast majority of whom were innocent civilians, but it also opened a Pandora's nuclear box, and the world would never be the same. Nuclear proliferation began, and 2 men, the leaders of the US and the USSR, would soon have the ability to effectively render the human species extinct in under 30 seconds. Such an enormous amount of power required also an enormous amount of planning to ensure that the weapons could not only be fired quickly, but also that the decision to fire them was truly being made by the president. And while this system developed over time, it started out remarkably basic. As the original nuclear weapons were dropped from planes, it was down to the Air Force to construct plans which could be presented to the president about potential nuclear targets. And at the time, it would likely have been plans about hitting the Soviet Union. However, as nuclear technology developed, nuclear weapons were soon able to be launched from submarines, like the Polaris nuclear system. As such, the US Navy, alongside the Air Force, produced nuclear strike plans for the president. Both groups produced similar targets and plans, and it was soon realised that this system made no sense. So a joint strategic planning staff was created. This was the group that produced the Single Integrated Operation Plan. In plain English, a group was made to create a nuclear war plan across all US military forces. One of the main features of the modern-day nuclear command system is that of the nuclear football. This is where the president selects their target and then uses a call and response card, known informally as the biscuit, to prove who they are. We know that all presidents since Dwight Eisenhower have had access to the football, but due to the obvious secrecy around it, we don't know exactly how the system has evolved. So let's assume that the US has been nuked and the president has survived. In this post-apocalyptic America, what happens next? Well, firstly, the president can use the nuclear football and select a target swiftly from a predefined list. To make the decision, a secure line has to be made with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. At this point, the president verifies himself by reading codes from the biscuit, and only then is the truly horrifying order given to the field commander of the nuclear weapons. During this whole process, the president theoretically has total control. While he must verify himself to give the orders to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they can't refuse the order. Except there is one exception. If any of the military officers believe the order is against the laws of armed conflict, then they not only can, but must refuse the order. However, the president could simply fire and replace them. And they're even allowed to appoint unqualified people to the role if all qualified officers make clear that they'll refuse the order. So if the president wants to strike, then in reality there's very little that can be done to stop them. But what if the president was wiped out in the nuclear strike against America? Well, the continuity of government plans then come into effect. Part of this is the line of succession. This starts with the Vice President and then moves down to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the President pro tempore in the Senate, then the Secretary of State, and so on and so on. You might reasonably suggest that as all of the politicians listed in the line of succession are generally located in Washington, D.C., what happens if that's where the nuclear bomb falls? Well, luckily, the line of succession isn't the only plan in place. The US has 4 main bunkers that major government departments could relocate to in the hours or days following a nuclear strike. The first is in Cheyenne, a bunker built into the side of a mountain in southern Colorado that used to host NORAD, the organization that tracks US airspace. Nowadays, it serves as an alternative command centre, because most of the staff have moved away to the nearby Peterson Air Force Base, likely due to a lessened fear of all-out nuclear war. The second bunker, the Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center in Virginia, would host FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Their role is to coordinate the country following a disaster, and are a branch of the Department of Homeland Security. While it's not known who or when members of the US government would be flown here, following the 9/11 attacks, the congressional leadership were evacuated to Mount Weather via helicopter. There is reason to believe then that a similar thing would happen in the lead up to the US being nuked. The third bunker is a lot closer to the political action, owing to the fact that it's located within the White House. This is the Presidential Emergency Operations Center, which was created in order to protect the president in case Washington DC was under attack during the Second World War. It seems unlikely though that the president would lock down here. During 9/11, it was revealed that communications lines were outdated, and that the ventilation systems really weren't very good. As such, carbon dioxide quickly filled the room, full of staff, military generals, and politicians. The point is that it doesn't seem to be the most durable bunker. Perhaps it's been modernised since then, but irrespective, it seems like there might be better bunkers for the president. The last bunker is the Raven Rock Mountain Complex in Pennsylvania, otherwise known as the bunker with the coolest goddamn logo. Its main function would be to host the US Air Force, Navy, Army, and Marine Corps. Together with Mount Weather and Cheyenne, the US government would not only be able to survive, but also ensure that even through nuclear war, US democracy prevails. As we said earlier, it's not clear which one of these bunkers the president would go to, and it's not even clear that the president would go to a bunker at all. While descending into the earth is a good option in a nuclear war, so is ascending into the skies. While many of us might be familiar with Air Force One, not many people know about its cooler, battle-hardened brother, the Doomsday plane. Officially called the National Airborne Operations Center, it can issue commands to bunkers and other officials around the country. The main differences between Air Force One and the Doomsday plane is that the latter can withstand electromagnetic pulses, and only uses analog flight equipment, which is less susceptible to cyber attacks. It's also less designed for comfort, and can house more military generals. But as you might expect, it doesn't host civilians. While it soars above a burning and radioactive US, those on board might begin to wonder what happened to their citizens. Did they survive? Are there even people left to govern? Well, it depends on where the bombs fall, and in some cases, whether people heed the advice sent out to them by the government. Like many countries, the US has an emergency warning system. This system allows the president to address the country via all TVs and radios, and nowadays it also includes sending texts to all citizens. And although so far, when texts have been sent out saying this is not a drill, it has turned out to be a drill, these texts can indeed be sent out when in fact it isn't a drill, when you actually need to do something. Some states have also conducted tests of the emergency broadcast system on TV before, and it's truly quite chilling to watch. That terrifying noise at the beginning of the broadcast is actually a specific area message encoding protocol. It classifies who the message is coming from, e.g. state authorities, the president, etc., and also other essential information, like the time of the message and a brief summary. If a nuke was incoming, aside from the news reports making clear that tensions were rising, this would likely be the public's first knowledge of a missile, and the public would likely only really be told to seek shelter and ration food and water. Because beyond this, there just isn't really anything the public can do to save themselves. And this is why nuclear weapons are so horrifying. The complete, utter, and indiscriminate annihilation of populations. However, if you're an important historical document, you might have a better chance. According to The Week, government officials have planned a hierarchy in a number of different institutions about which documents should be saved over others. For example, it was decided that the Declaration of Independence should be saved over the Constitution, and the Gettysburg Address would be saved over George Washington's military commission. There's even a team of park rangers ready to evacuate the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia to the Appalachian Mountains in the event of a nuclear strike. But what do you think about these plans? And how do they compare to the UK's nuclear plans, which we discussed in another video, linked down below? Let us know your thoughts on this and the nuclear plans more generally in the comments. If you want to get even more involved, then you can also back us on Patreon, which gets you a whole bunch of perks, from exclusive live streams to early access to videos, behind the scenes posts, and the ability to vote on our video topics. The link to the Patreon is down below, and thanks for your support, because we literally couldn't do this without you. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description.